I'm Tricia Harrison, and I'm a project manager at Bulletproof Solutions, and I manage our production team. Part of what I do is interface with our vendors who are working on particular projects for us, and I make sure that projects are staffed properly, that they're staffed to meet our production schedules, and make sure that the deliverables are going out on time and supporting the client manager on a project. Well, I've been in the business for about 15 years, and I started out as an instructional designer, so I've worked my way up through instructional design, working as a senior instructional designer, team lead, and have moved into project management, so managing both remote teams and on-site teams, which has led me into my production manager role. I find that a lot of our customers ask, what is my time commitment going to be on this project? What are my subject matter experts going to be spending their time on, and how much time are they going to be spending on this project? So I think for consumers who are looking for e-learning vendors, understanding what that time commitment is for an e-learning project right up front is very critical. Any reputable e-learning vendor is going to be able to answer that question if they have if they follow a process. Well, I'll speak from my experience. From my experience, we're either told when a project needs to be completed, so we will work backward from there, or we will determine a regular production schedule. And we would always talk with the client in the very first kickoff call about what that schedule is, about those time commitments. How long are their valuable subject matter experts going to be involved in the project, and when? Having that conversation right from day one, adjusting the schedule as needed is critical to keeping it on track. Personally, we have two types of schedules. We have what we call a production schedule, which is meant for our internal team to keep our internal production on track. And then we have a client-facing schedule, which outlines exactly those dates and deliverables that are coming to the client at each phase. So that customer-facing schedule will detail when their SMEs need to be involved, when reviews are happening, and most important, the end date of the project. At the very least, I would insist on understanding when my valuable resources are going to be involved. I would say that's key. I would ask, how long do we have to review? Can we extend those reviews? Can we shorten those reviews to meet a deadline, for example? Your e-learning vendor should be able to be flexible enough to answer those questions and modify their schedules based on your needs. There is a potential risk. It's in any project, you have your three-legged stool. You have your timeline, you have your budget, and you have your quality. If you want to shorten or lengthen any of those things, you run the risk of unbalancing the stool. So, for example, when we are asked to modify our schedules, typically we would look at adding resources. So instead of modifying our process, which we know is very important, we would look at potentially adding resources and understand what the cost is. And that's when you should enter into a conversation with your vendor about, what does adding resources mean? Does it impact the bottom line? Am I going to pay more? Those are all types of questions you should be asking. I would suggest at a minimum 1 weekly status meeting, even if it's a half an hour or 15 minutes to check in on the status of a project. Typically at the beginning of a project, the meetings are more frequent. So for the first couple of weeks, for example, you could be involved in a kickoff call and then in a design meeting, just to firm up the requirements, get to meet your production team and the folks who are going to be working on your project. But after that, I would suggest a minimum of 1 time per week. Short meetings just to understand where you are against the baseline schedule. Communicate with their team. We work hard to keep our internal teams on task, and I think it's just as important for consumers to keep their project stakeholders and their internal teams informed of what's happening in their project. I would suggest talking to your project manager and understanding why the project is late. In my mind, it's completely unacceptable for a project to be late by months, even by, weeks. So one of the suggestions that I would make would be to talk about a discount. Is there something that I can regain from your lateness? Again, if you're finding that your e-learning project or e-learning provider is chronically late, one of the items you could ask for is, can you assign more resources to this project at no cost to get this project back on track? Really put the ball into your vendor's court. You're paying good money to have your courses developed to a high standard, and if your vendor's not meeting that standard, it's well within your rights to expect them to right the ship. Sometimes in projects we find that clients will provide their own images. So either images that they've used for internal presentations or images that they have within the company. Oftentimes with an e-learning course, you need to have very high resolution images. Otherwise, when you publish them online, they look very grainy and pixelated. Because the development team then will have to go back and either ask the customer for alternate media, or we would have to source it on our own, which would add time to the schedule. Absolutely. Even in a rapid development project, you're still dealing with milestones, you're still dealing with reviews and deliverables. So no matter how rapid the course is being developed, still always insist on a schedule. Well, you should expect full transparency in terms of scheduling. It's my opinion, if you don't have a plan and you're just lobbing things out there, things are not going to get done. Not everybody's going to understand the expectations. Not everybody's going to understand when the deliverables are due. Your subject matter experts won't be able to be scheduled because there's not a plan. So absolutely insist on a production schedule, always. Absolutely. I've found that not a lot of consumers and our clients really will ask about the background and experience of the production team. And even though the production team is in the background, the experience and level of output of that production team is extremely important. So I think it's important as a consumer to request to meet the production team, to find out a little bit about them. What's their background? What's their experience? What have they produced in the past? That's not protected under an NDA. Asking for samples is another great way to understand what your potential course is going to look like. I request to meet our clients because it's important for me to understand expectations. How fast do they want their project to go? How much media are they providing? Understanding the requirements is very important to me, so I can then relay those to all of my team.